Sometimes you really need to get a message across, really prove a point, you know? And sometimes proving that point is as simple as shooting bigger bullets than your enemy is. And sometimes size really does matter. Well, at least it does with the weapon that we're looking at today. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the Scar H assault rifle in BattleBit Remastered. So folks, before we dive straight into the review here today, here's how the video is going to be laid out. We're going to start off with a breakdown of the Scar H's stats, talking to the weapon's pros and cons and how they all line up. We'll then get into some weapon-specific tips and tricks for using the Scar to the best of its abilities in combat, and then we'll finally wrap up with some discussion around the attachment options available to the Scar and how you can really take the weapon to the next level with those attachment options. As always, a big thank you goes out to community member Oxygen, whose tools and stat collation work has done a lot to inform these weapon reviews. But alright folks, let's get into the deets around the Scar H and see what we're dealing with here today. Now, we kick things off with the damage and rate of fire as is tradition here on the channel, but we are met by a world of extremes here. Starting off with the damage, the Scar H features the heftiest damage per shot in the entire assault rifle category. Hell, I think it may even be the heaviest damage per shot of any automatic weapon in the game bar none, maybe tying directly with the MK14 EBR DMR, which is also capable of automatic fire. The Scar rocks a 42 maximum damage out to 151 meters, dropping to a minimum damage of 14.7 at 299 meters. But in tandem, we are also welcomed with the slowest fire rate of the assault rifle category, a pleasure that is shared only other by the Orge 3. The Scar H sits at a 500 rounds per minute or 8.33 rounds per second fire rate, which is again not great. So the Scar certainly doesn't do things halfway here. It's an all or nothing, ride or die kind of gal. But there are certainly some benefits to that. Drawing our attention to that maximum damage for a moment here, a damage of 42 crosses the threshold that allows the Scar to maintain a 3-shot kill against normal body armors, and being able to do it without any need for a long or heavy barrel attachment. That goes a long way to giving the Scar a very strong and consistent presence on the battlefield. Now, as we'll talk about shortly here, the lacking rate of fire does mean that the Scar isn't going to be setting any time to kill records anytime soon, but the consistency of being able to 3-shot most opponents in the game all the way out to 151 meters is not something to scoff at. Hell, it's even something that you tend to take for granted, and you'll notice that as soon as you switch off the Scar for a moment after using it for a while. But also, and yes, you're seeing that right, if you go for headshots with the Scar, you will always kill in at least 3 shots to the head, 2 if you're dealing with normal helmets or no helmet at all. And I've got to be honest here folks, the dopamine hit that comes from 2-tapping some cocky bastard that thought they could make it across some open field in front of you is addicting as hell. Because of the Scar's high alpha damage and the range in which that drop-off starts to occur as well, it actually maintains a pretty strong distance out to medium distances and even at times longish distances as well, which is something that should be highlighted here as well, but keep that thought locked away in your mind for a moment here. Alright, let's say we take the extreme rate of fire and damage for a second here and combine them. What does that get us in the world of time to kill? Well, it's not the best, but it's actually not too bad either. We're left with a pretty serviceable best case time to kill of 240 milliseconds. For comparison, that actually slightly beats out the likes of the M4A1 and the AK-74, but falls way behind the likes of the AK-15 and the FAL. So again, a nice middle ground. Funny that the weapon with the most extreme damage and rate of fire stats actually ends up being quite balanced in the world of time to kill performance, hey? But I digress. This certainly gives the Scar H some potency that lets you play aggressive with it should you dare to do so. But unfortunately, as soon as you engage heavier armors in the game, we can see the Scar get punished pretty heavily, jumping up to a 360 millisecond time to kill at the worst case scenario. And that's wholly thanks to the rate of fire being so slow. Every time you jump up a bullet to kill threshold, the Scar is going to take far longer than most other weapons to get that extra round down range, which exacerbates the time to kill far more than you may expect initially. This same logic also applies to if you miss your shots with the Scar as well, meaning that your accuracy is going to be key here. As always, just want to be clear in mentioning that these time to kill stats are theoretical in nature. They assume that all bullets will either hit the chest or the head area sequentially with a 100% accuracy and no bullet travel time coming into the equation. Obviously, the further a target is from you, the less accurate you're likely to be, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at these stats. Thankfully, the muzzle velocity isn't going to make your life too difficult here when it comes to tracking and hitting moving targets at range. With 700 meters per second, you shouldn't have too many troubles in this department. But this puts us on a good segue to talk to the SCAR's handling. And some of you may be surprised to know that the SCAR actually sports the exact same recoil pattern as the AK-15. It's legitimately a copy and paste of the 1.60 vertical recoil and the 2.10 horizontal recoil. So if you're used to using the AK-15, then the SCAR should feel right at home to you from a certain point of view. And because the SCAR actually fires a little slower than that of the AK-15, it may even feel a little bit more comfortable to use by comparison. However, by design of its heftier horizontal recoil, the SCAR is going to be one of those weapons that can easily get away from you under longer bursts. So be prepared to deal with that by letting off the trigger once in a while and engaging some bursting mechanics. Thankfully, we do have a 1x first shot multiplier here, so we aren't going to be punished for bursting the weapon to counter that sloppy horizontal movement. With an accuracy of 75.00, the SCAR isn't the most accurate weapon out there in the AR category, but it also ain't losing by a long shot either. Now, moving on to the reload speeds here, we are sitting on a base reload of 4 seconds, which may not sound like the end of the world here, given that that is the same reload speed of the M4A1, but the SCAR only features a 20-round magazine. Now, sure, a higher damage does afford the weapon a better magazine economy in needing fewer bullets to kill a target on average, but factor in the fact that the perfect world hardly ever exists and the average accuracy of the average player, and you're definitely going to be reloading the SCAR a lot. And with that reload time, it's going to hurt after a while. A long reload, aka the reload you get when you empty the magazine, makes that all the more worse, clocking in at approximately 5.1 seconds, so be sure to keep an eye on those magazines, folks. Thankfully, a quick reload cuts it down to 3.1 seconds by default, which is definitely snappier by comparison. And remember that we can also mount reload speed improving attachments on this gun, unlike the Groza that we reviewed last week, so that is a plus as well. With the remaining stats, we've actually got a bit of a mixed bag here. Firstly, the ADS time of 200 milliseconds. This one actually caught me off guard, but this is a little bit better than all of the other heavy-hitting assault rifles in the arsenal. It's even faster than the likes of the M4, the FAMAS, the HK419, a lot of stuff, which makes the SCAR very solid in reacting to surprise threats that you face very quickly. Unfortunately, we are immediately greeted by a run speed of 0.95 times, so while you'll always be ready to quickly snap into combat with the ambient and sights time, it might just take you a little bit longer to get there by comparison with the SCAR. But alright, that's the SCAR in a nutshell, and look, I have to be honest with you guys here, the SCAR holds a very special place in my heart. Now, sure, it's not a meta weapon by comparison to some of the other guns out there, it doesn't sport an outlandish time to kill or a superb uptime that makes it great for dealing with the swarms of players that you'll face in BattleBit at a time, but man, there is something about the consistency of it in the hands of someone who can aim the weapon that really makes it sing all of the right songs in combat. That 2-shot headshot against the majority of targets alone in a game like this is enough to get me crawling back to it from time to time. And if you can employ that kind of accuracy in your gameplay, it's such a good time and it's very hard to pass up. However, similar to that of the Groza that we discussed last week, this is a weapon that will quickly punish you should you miss your shots here. With a 500 rounds per minute fire rate, a miss here is going to feel catastrophic to the weapon's performance, and the time to kill stats only go as far as to prove that. Every shot you add to the weapon's bullet to kill threshold, whether that by armor class or by simply missing a shot, is going to add another 120 milliseconds to the time to kill. So remember how we mentioned earlier just how important having a well-placed aim was for the Groza? Yeah, that's doubly important for the SCAR. So ensuring that both your initial crosshair placement and your mid-burst recoil control is on point is really going to be make or break between the SCAR actually working for you or not. And if it doesn't, well then it can be one of the most frustrating experiences you have with the weapon in BattleBit. So on that note, one of the most important things I found that really made a difference in using the SCAR effectively was learning when to release the trigger. It sounds simple, I know, but we all do it. We can all get pretty excited and get caught up in the prospect of beaming a target in one burst. As I said, we've all been there. And sometimes we overcommit as a result, which actually makes our lives harder than we have to in killing a target. With previous assault rifles that you may be used to, like the M4A1 or even the AK-74, the recoil there is manageable enough to score long-distance sprays on targets in one burst without needing to lift the trigger, at least with enough practice. But with the SCAR and its rather jumpy horizontal recoil, we are going to learn real quick that lifting off the trigger every once in a while and exercising some patience will go a long way in netting you that faster time to kill. If you can feel the horizontal recoil on the gun kicking you off target, take a moment, recenter, and get yourself back to where you need to be to get the job done. Again, this is really something that is more important with the SCAR over a lot of other guns that you may be used to using already. So that's why I really harp on this in this video. Now, one thing the SCAR has earned a bit of a reputation for in the game so far is being the best quote-unquote DMR in the game, unironically, despite being an assault rifle. And I think that stems not from the fact that the SCAR is a particularly good DMR of any kind, just from the fact that the DMRs do actually suck quite a lot in this game. Now, I do have to be honest here, there's certainly some merit to throwing the SCAR into a semi-auto mode and cracking those headshots out to approximately 150 meters. In fact, it works to a surprising degree of success actually. There would be some times where I would rock the 1x sight on the SCAR, jam it in semi-auto mode, and just casually delete guys at ranges that felt almost criminal, truth be told. But in saying that, I would also temper some expectations in that the weapon's recoil pattern and accuracy stat does prevent it from really extending beyond where a 1x would be considered effective. As good as that damage payload is over range, you still aren't a sniper, and placing yourself in those situations isn't going to net you much in the way of victory. Have some fun at range, sure, but keep it within reason. But alright folks, that moves us on to the attachment options for the SCAR and building the build that makes this thing just that little bit better. Now for me, the build here is going to be all about addressing some of the extremities that come from the horizontal recoil, while also ensuring that the vertical recoil doesn't get completely out of whack as a result. And believe it or not here, you can actually reduce the horizontal recoil even further than what we're going to do with this build here today. But in doing so, you're going to demolish that vertical kick. So this is a happy medium and what worked for me in my time in playing with the SCAR. Starting off with the all-important grip, we're going to be rocking the BCM Gunfighter grip, which is that primary driver in reducing that horizontal kick. It on its own does a fantastic job in limiting the kick and makes the weapon far more stable to use, which when you then combine with the compensator on the barrel slot, does a lot in aggregate to bring the angry beast that is the SCAR back in line a little bit here. It kind of tames the weapon just that little bit, which is fantastic. Sight-wise, I have opted to run the 1x here because, as we said before, I feel like anything beyond that is going to be pushing the barriers on the SCAR just that little bit too much here. But if you are feeling so inclined, a 2x slip scope with a top-mounted sight is the absolute furthest I would go for a medium range scope, and beyond that, you're just getting a bit excessive with this weapon platform. Lastly, we have the magazine here, and as is tradition here in my videos, we've gone for the quick AMAG to further improve those reload times and keep the weapon ready more often than not. And just to address the extended mag here for a moment, because I know it's going to come up in the comment section, yes, an extended magazine SCAR H is a ton of fun to use, don't get me wrong. But given that it only gets you out to a 30 round mag effectively, and yet destroys your reload speed, actually leaves you worse off despite that magazine size increase. And when you throw in the recoil negatives on top of that as well, it just doesn't add up as far as it being worth it in my opinion. But folks, with all of that said, that is the SCAR H weapon review for BattleBit Remastered. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below if you're enjoying the SCAR H in-game. Is it one of your go-to guns, or do you avoid this thing like the Black Plague? Let me know down below. As always, if you guys made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, hit that like button, it does go a long way to supporting the channel, and if you're new here, consider subscribing for more BattleBit content, especially weapon reviews like this. And as always, feel free to check out my social media links, including my Twitch stream, in the description down below. Once again guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care guys, have a good one.